Italians in Egypt, also referred to as Italian Egyptians, are a community with a history that goes back to Roman times. History. The last queen of ancient Egypt married the Roman Mark Antony, bringing her country as dowry, and since then Egypt was part of the Roman Empire for 7 centuries. Many people from the Italian peninsula moved to live in Egypt during those centuries. The tombs of Christian Alexandria shows how deep was that presence. Since then there has been a continuous presence of people and their descendants in Egypt. Origins of actual community. During the Middle Ages, Italian communities from the maritime republics of Italy were present in Egypt as merchants. Since the Renaissance, the Republic of Venice has always been present in the history and commerce of Egypt. There was even a Venetian Quarter in Cairo. After Napoleon I, the Italian community in Alexandria and Egypt started to grow in a huge way. The size of the community had reached around 55,000 just before World War II, forming the second largest expatriate community in Egypt. World War II. The expansion of the colonial Italian Empire after World War I was directed toward Egypt by Benito Mussolini. In order to control the Suez Canal, the Italian Duce created in the 1930s some sections of the National Fascist Party in Alexandria and Cairo, and many hundreds of Italian Egyptians become members of it. Even some intellectuals, like Filippo Tommaso Marinetti and the poet Giuseppe Ungaretti, were supporters of the Italian nationalism in their native Alexandria. As a consequence, during World War II, the British authorities interned in concentration camps nearly 8,000 Italian Egyptians with sympathy for Italian fascism, in order to prevent sabotage when the Italian army attacked western Egypt in summer 1940. The areas of Egypt temporarily conquered by the Kingdom of Italy in the war were administered by the military. Indeed, the nationalist organization Misr al-Fatah of the young officers Gamal Abdel Nasser and Anwar Sadat was deeply influenced by the fascism ideals against the British Empire. Nasser and Sadat were ready to do a revolt in Cairo in summer 1942 if Rommel had conquered Alexandria after a victory at the El Alamein battle. However, like many other foreign communities in Egypt, migration back to Italy and the West reduced the size of the community greatly due to wartime internment and the rise of Nasserist nationalism against Westerners. After the war, many members of the Italian community related to the defeated Italian expansion in Egypt were forced to move away, starting a process of reduction and disappearance of the Italian Egyptians. After 1952, the Italian Egyptians were reduced from the nearly 60,000 of 1940 to just a few thousands. Most Italian Egyptians returned to Italy during the 1950s and 1960s, although a few Italians continue to live in Alexandria and Cairo. Officially, the Italians in Egypt at the end of 2007 were 3,374. In 2007 there were nearly 4,000 Italians in Egypt, mostly technicians and managers working in the 500 Italian companies with contracts with the Egyptian government. Just a few hundreds of retired, real, Italian Egyptians remain, mainly in Alexandria and Cairo. Egyptian-Italian relations. Italy's preeminence in its economic relations with Egypt was reflected in the size of its expatriate community. Some of the first educational missions that Egypt sent to Europe under Muhammad Ali were headed to Italy to learn the art of printing. Muhammad Ali also engaged a number of Italian experts to assist in the various tasks of building the modern state. In the exploration of antiquities, the exploration of minerals, in the conquest of Sudan, designing the city of Khartoum and drawing the first survey map of the Nile Delta. In addition, Italians featured prominently in the royal court under Ismail, which is perhaps why Italian architects were chosen to design most of Khedive Ismail's palaces, new suburbs of the capital and public buildings. The most famous building related to the Italian community was the Royal Opera House, which was to be inaugurated in 1871 with the Aida by the Italian composer Giuseppe Verdi. The Khedivial Opera House, or Cairo Royal Opera House, was the original opera house in Cairo. It was inaugurated on November 1869 and burned down on October 1971. The opera house was built on the orders of the Khedive Ismail to celebrate the opening of the Suez Canal. The Italian-Egyptian architects Pietro Avosconi and Mario Rossi designed the building. Pietro Avosconi, before his 1891 death in Alexandria, created even the famous Corniche of Alexandria. The fondness of Egyptian monarchs towards Italy appeared in the number of Italians employed in their courts. Italian-Egyptian relations were so strong and deemed so important that when the King of Italy Victor Emmanuel III abdicated in 1946 after Italy's defeat in World War II, Egyptian King Farouk invited Victor Emmanuel III to live in Alexandria. Victor Emmanuel III died in Alexandria in December 1947 and was buried there, behind the altar of St. Catherine's Cathedral. Areas of origin and residence. Before 1952, Italians formed the second largest expatriate community in Egypt, after the Greeks. The 1882 census of Egypt recorded 18,665 Italians in the country. By 1897 the figure rose to 24,454 and 30 years later to 52,462. Thus, the Italian community increased by 122% in those years. Writing in Al-Ahram of 19 February 1933, under the headline, "The Italians in Egypt," the Italian historian Angelo San Marco wrote, "The Venetians and the people from Trieste, Dalmatia, Genoa, Pisa, Livorno, Naples and Sicily continued to reside in Egypt long after their native cities fell into decay and lost their status as maritime centers with the decline of the Mediterranean as a major thoroughfare for world trade." Elsewhere in the article, San Marco writes that the Italian community in Egypt held monopolies on the goods that were still popular in the East, which included many imports. The majority of the Italian community lived in either Cairo or Alexandria, with 18,575 in the former and 24,280 in the latter. According to the 1928 census, Italians tended to live in exclusively Italian neighborhoods or in neighborhoods with other foreigners. Perhaps the most famous of these districts in Cairo was known as the Venetian Quarter. Nevertheless, San Marco notes that, in order to avoid harassment, the Italians tended to wear Egyptian dress and follow, as much as possible, Egyptian customs. Community organizations. The Italian community in Egypt consisted primarily of a large array of merchants, artisans, professionals and an increasing number of workers. This was because Italy had remained for a long period of time politically and economically weak, which rendered it incapable of competing with the major industries and capitalist investment coming to Egypt from France. During the fascist period there were 8 public and 6 Italian parochial schools. The government schools were supervised by an official committee chaired by the Italian consul and they had a total student enrollment of approximately 1,500. Other schools had student bodies, numbering in the hundreds. Italians in Alexandria also had 22 philanthropic societies, among which were the National Opera Society, the Society for Disabled War Veterans, the Society of Collectors of Military Insignia, the Italian Club, the Italian Federation for Labor Cooperation, the War Orphans Relief Society, the Mussolini Italian Hospital, and the Dante Alighieri Italian Language Association. In addition, many Italian-language newspapers were published in Alexandria, the most famous of which was L'Oriente and Il Messaggero Egiziano. Indeed, The hundreds of Italian words that have been incorporated into the Egyptian dialect is perhaps the best testimony to the fact that of all the foreign communities residing in Egypt, Italians were the most closely connected to Egyptian society. San Marco ventures that the reason for this was that our people are noted for their spirit of tolerance, their lack of religious or nationalist chauvinism and, unlike other peoples, their aversion to appearing superior, language and religion. All remaining Italian Egyptians speak Italian, while speaking Arabic and English as second language, and are Catholics. The Italian Egyptians of the new generations are assimilated to the Egyptian society, and most of them speak mainly Arabic but still secondarily Italian. In religion, most Italian Egyptians are Roman Catholics. Egypt in the eyes of the Italians. The participation of the Italian community in Egypt is considered one of the most positive participations in the activities of the cultural program. Egypt in the eyes of the world. Anti-abs also, the Italian community has positive participations in Egypt. Of the most prominent events of Egypt in the eyes of the Italians, conference with the participation of an elite of the Italian community in Egypt, in the presence of a representative of the Cinematic Syndicate, a representative of the Egyptians Tour Guide Syndicate and a representative of the Ministry of Tourism, at Gezira Arts Center. Notable people: Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, poet and writer; Giuseppe Ungaretti, poet and essayist; Goffredo Alessandrini, scriptwriter and film director; Angelo San Marco, historian; Pietro Avoscani, architect; Yolanda Cristina Gigliotti, better known as Dalida, famous singer and actress; Stefan Rosti, actor and film director; Rushdie Abazar, actor, mother was Italian; Stefan El Shaarawy, a young football player born and raised in Italy who plays for AS Monaco. His father is Egyptian and his mother is Italian. Antonio Lasaic, architect, engineer, poet and musician. Ashraf Saber, athlete born to an Egyptian father and an Italian mother. Adele Smith, founder of the Union of Italian Muslims. He was born in Naples to a Scottish father and an Egyptian mother. Nadia Gamal, actress that was born in Alexandria as Maria Cardiodis to a Greek father and an Italian mother. Lara Skandar, singer born in the USA to an Egyptian-Italian father and a Lebanese mother. Bibliography: Petrosioli, Marta, Ultra il mito, L'Urigito degli Italiani Mondadori, Milano, 2007. ISBN 97888-424-2120-7. Rodogna, Davide. Fascism's European Empire. Cambridge University Press. Cambridge, 2006. ISBN 0-521-84515-7. Serra, Luigi. L'Italia e l'Urigito dalla rivolta di Arabi Pascia all'avvento del fascism. Marzaracia editor. Milano, 1991. Yannikakis. Alexandria 1860–1960. The Brief Life of a Cosmopolitan Community. Alexandria Press. Alexandria, 1997.